Hi everyone, my name's Melanie Thorley and this is Christy Santana and we are solicitors at MJT Law and welcome to another Lawcast.
Yeah, we're back for another week on a very, very dreary day.
Very.
Dreary week actually for that matter.
Yep.
I'm not sure Queensland can lay claim to the sunny state anymore.
No, it's been raining for a week guys, which is pretty unusual for us, although we've just come out of a rain event
and we're into another one, but
we are.
Nothing stops the Lawcast.
That's right.
That's what.
Bring it on, baby.
So what's on this
I
week?
have two cases today. The first one being a case from the Fair Work Commission. Well, not cases. I've got two things to talk about today.
2 points.
Two points. The first one being from the Fair Work Commission, and this is about University of Southern Queensland has a lecturer who. Two things happened. First of all, the lecturer made an anti-bullying claim against the university, trying to stop the supervisor from disparaging her. And they looked into this further, and apparently the lecturer has a permanent and irreversible medical condition.
No.
Which she said she was required to work from home for the next 5 years.
Next 5 years?
Yeah.
So, in real effect, indefinitely, forever.
Yeah.
Because, 5 years was going to change.
It's a lot of time.
What's going to change on the 5th year?
I have no idea what's going to change. I have no idea, but this is a 5-year flexible working arrangement.
Which, as we know, seems just completely implausible because people aren't employed for 5 years. Maybe the lecturing industry is a little bit different to most, but if you're an employee, you don't really plan for a 5-year.
Yeah, there was a little bit of argy-bargy in here about those of you who don't know, lecturers are required to publish. It's
their jobs are sort of twofold.
Being in a university means you have to also research and publish as well as teach. It is a well-known fact that it's difficult to do both at the same time.
Yeah.
But it is a requirement and everybody knows that you have to do both at the same time. And from time to time there's a little bit of conflict around how much teaching versus how much research and publishing.
Yeah, well you can imagine the types of person who might be motivated to go into that area might be more geared or might want to do more teaching than they do writing and vice versa. You might be one who really is there an academic to explore your area of
and
knowledge.
The only reason why they're teaching is because they have to.
Because they have to.
Yeah. Well, I can't comment on this person, but she complained that it was unreasonable work expectations to do the student work and to do her own research work, and she got more and more upset about this, and at the end of the day, apparently she had all this conflict and she asked for it. She had an irreversible and a permanent.
Yeah.
I'm not sure what the difference is because it says permanent and irreversible.
Because if
something is a permanent, surely.
If it's irreversible,
it's permanent.
Then it's permanent. Because how would it ever not become permanent?
Yeah, it's kind of a weird one.
Nevertheless, basically forever.
It kind of says
I'm having this forever.
Yeah, I've got this thing, and it's happening, and it's now, and it's happening forever. And they said no. They said you could work until you can work from home until the next what do you call
semester?
Semester.
Because didn't she work sort of teach half the year, write half the year, or something like that?
I think they do though. I think sometimes how lecturers work is a bit of a mystery for most laypersons. But we come across it from time to time, and their contracts and the way they're on and off.
They're actually a very unique part of the workforce. There are actually a very disproportionate amount of strange cases that arise out of academics compared to considering how few of them there are.
Yeah, in comparison to an office worker or chippy or someone who works, Queensland Health.
It was only 6 months ago that we were talking about the chap in James Cook University about the academic freedom.
Yeah, and the working arrangements around there. Anyway, so the the supervisor said, although he appreciated that she had health issues, he could not approve the application until 2026, but would instead approve the application until the start of semester. And the lecturer replied, warning that refusing a reasonable work arrangement would be unwise. Now, I just wanted to unpack that a little bit. I mean, I get it. I mean, we have these clients from time to time who say quite appalling things, to their employer.
Yep.
And you and I are often in conflict about whether or not that warrants disciplinary action.
As in, you might be talking about something that's legitimate, as in the employee's request or complaint or whatever it might be, whatever they're talking about is legitimate.
Yeah, but the
way in which they do it is unsavory.
and for those who are not across Australian workplace law, we have something called a general protections in the Fair Work Act, which basically says an employee has a right to exercise a workplace right, make a complaint or inquiry about their job, and not be adversely treated because of it. Adverse treatment could be anything from being made fearful for their job, being demoted, or even terminated. And
fundamentally, the protection against retribution.
Yeah, and although I feel that it should be okay for employees to make complaints, I don't think tantrums are actually acceptable.
No.
And this kind of language, reasonable working arrangement, would be unwise. I mean, it is a threat.
It is a threat.
And I don't think employees should be threatening their employers. But what to do about it? I mean, you and I have had this conversation a couple of times, and for those of you who are regular watchers of the Lawcast will know that often Chris and I are in conflict. We have different sensibilities about certain things. And sometimes I say, nah, this warrants disciplinary action, it has gone too far. And you would go, but they're upset. Shouldn't they be allowed to be upset? And just by virtue of overreacting to something which was already upsetting for them means they shouldn't get. I mean, it's an interesting...
It's a chicken and egg scenario in many ways, but I sort of tend to fall on the, I suppose, being very risk averse about the way I think employers should handle this situation is broadly yes. If you want to take disciplinary action against someone who completely loses it and in essence you're not actually disciplining them because of their workplace rights, it's actually because they called you a this and a that.
Yeah, they've thrown a massive tanty, gone through the office, had a bit of a scream, maybe thrown something.
Yeah, which it's the throwing of the thing that's the problem, or the tantrum. But the problem lies
proportionality,
as well as just it's a facts issue. It's going to be when you have to defend that dismissal. I think it can be quite difficult to displace whether you are you firing them or are you taking disciplinary reason because of the complaint or because of the thing, and because they're happening at the same time. I mean, mindset is not one that we are.
Yeah, look, it is really tough. I think that it's funny because often I've got a really high level of tolerance when it comes to these things. We come across lots of different scenarios and I'm like, well, I wouldn't have fired for that. But actually, maybe it's my sensibilities because I don't like insubordination.
Yeah, and this is what we're talking about.
And that would push me, I think. And maybe that's why I think that this is one step too far. But anyway, so nothing happened to her. Supervisor also allegedly repeated to attempt to coerce the lecturer to meet unreasonable work expectations. So we've got all this. So the Fair Work Commission dismissed the application. And the Commissioner Simpson said that she had demonstrated a tendency to make allegations of this nature readily. So she's
got history.
We've got a problem employee who just kind of...
It's just badgering their supervisor or manager, whoever it might be. And I mean, one of the things important to this case is sensibly the manager did very little after. It was from what I could tell, it was very much water over a duck's back. This employee was badgering
stuck
them,
to their guns, but didn't react.
Didn't react.
Yeah.
And sensibly, they rejected the 5-year working from home arrangement, because I'm not sure any employer could ever commit to that.
And this is starting to happen now.
It is.
Because of the global event.
Yes.
People are going back to work, and it's been 2 years it's been over 2 years. It's been over 2 years since it happened, since the global event kicked off, for Australia anyway. And there's a lot of people who purchased houses out somewhere,
They
nice and cheap.
Organise
their lives based on not working in the office, and all of a sudden they're starting to be asked to come back, and there's pushback. And we've talked a little bit about this.
Well, I think it's just an unwise decision. If taking her words,
don't move into the middle of nowhere thinking you're always going to be.
It was never going to be a forever.
It's not a forever.
I don't think anyone. I mean, maybe there's going to be an element of it moving forward for a long time.
This
day
transition,
a week, a bit of a
hot desking, that sort of thing. But you're going to be in the office
You're going to be in the office at some point.
Yeah.
I think for most people it's going to be either 3 or 4 days.
Yeah.
Realistically, if not all the time.
Yeah.
It's. I think very few companies are going to move to a 1 day a week or 2 day or 9 day a week. I think it's going to be majority in the office with her.
Well, it's cohesion of workforce. So that's part of the issue there. Commissioner Simpson went on to say that the evidence overall demonstrated that the lecturer tended to overact and assume the worst of others. So we've got a real conflict here with what Commissioner Simpson felt about this bullying application. Noting the lecturer was still able to work from home 2 days a week. Commissioner Simpson found that she made 7 requests to work from home. They were all approved except for the request to work from home for 5 years. So I think that the university had been quite reasonable.
If they'd given her all those other ones. And their counter proposal seemed quite generous as well. For a semester or a year.
Yeah, let's just get you to the next stage. Let's get to the next point. I often find, as an employer myself, it's a dumb argument to engage in, to say, no, I can't do 5 years full stop. Let's just get you to the next point, and let's see where we're at then, because future is the future. Let's deal with the now. Yeah, let's deal with what's happening right now. And they said it was implausible that the supervisor was attempting to pressure the lecturer and engage in unethical conduct that would fall within the meaning of bullying. So the whole thing was just dismissed. But I thought this concept of asking to work from home for the next 5 years was just off the wall.
Off the wall. I'm interested to know what your opinion, though, and maybe this is more as an employer than anything, is prior to this, she had also filed, I think, 2 other applications for, not for the same facts, but for similar disagreements, basically, with the lecturer, with the university. This is now dating back, I believe, it's going on sort of 10 years or something, this disjointedness between her and the lecturer and her manager and the universities.
Constant conflict.
What happens next?
Well, this is it, isn't it?
I'm not sure this scenario has utility moving forward.
Well, I mean, everyone could just suck it up and get back to work. She's working from home 2 days a week.
I'm not sure she can. I'm not sure she can.
Well, she can't then, promote some type of performance improvement plan, some type of disciplinary action in relation to just not getting on with the job properly, the constant obstruction in the workplace. Maybe the relationship's broken. Maybe it's always been broken. You can't easily force a disgruntled employee to leave, but you can attempt to make the workplace more palatable. And you do, but that takes time and effort, and not every employer has that time or effort. So I don't know. She's complained quite a lot. She wants 5 years to work from home. She's not getting that. She's not resigning.
No, because if she didn't resign back then, she's not going to resign now.
She's not going to resign now. I think there's just going to be conflict in the workplace moving forward.
But it's a sort of tough one when it comes to it, because you've got the general protections provisions there, and you have an employee who is complaining so often and so
why can't you
meaningfully?
If it's meaningless, the complaints, I mean. I think it's meaningless to argue with your employer that they're refusing to let you work from home for 5 years. But you have a workplace right to agitate your claim. I think at some point it's not a complaint about what's happening, but more just complaining in general. And is it about your job anymore, or just about trying to get what you want? You know, I wonder. But yeah, there is an awful lot of. We've also talked about this in previous podcasts. The way sometimes we look at the system and it does feel broken.
Because I actually have a lot of sympathy for this university. But an employee is exercising so many workplace rights, putting you through whole litigations. You know, these aren't just
the time, the effort, the brain space, the whole thing.
These are big complaints, big exercises, and you'd almost feel helpless because you've got an unprofitable. I think this is a situation where you're getting a really unprofitable employee, and you'd be.
I don't know.
Sort of, you're in a state of stagnation.
There's no evidence here there's been any offers of, you know, deals to leave or whatever. But you'd think at some point enough's enough. I don't know. I don't know if that has an easy answer. I just thought it was interesting that someone asked for 5 years. I have another thing.
Go on.
This came up a couple of weeks ago, and I was fascinated by this. So, and good on them. But there was a company that has recently announced that it will offer its employees, and I like the way it says employees, menstrual leave, allowing anyone suffering from excessive period pain or other complications extra time off. I just think the language in the broadcast is kind of generic, but we know who we're talking.
But it can't be applied generically.
It can't be. And it says it makes Australia one of the first companies in the industry to offer such a benefit to its staff. So
we're talking about leave on top of personal.
That's right.
Because generally this would fall within personal leave.
Yeah, it says here, and they did this just to give you a bit of context around this. I'm not going to name the company because I'm just a little bit concerned about everything else that might go on here. But it says that the spokesman of this company said they estimate that this will amount to an extra day per quarter for employees. I like the way they say employees on this point, who take advantage of the extra time off. But also told the outlet that staff members are free to take more time off whenever period pains occur. Employees can also choose just to take a few hours rather than full days. Menstrual leave fosters inclusiveness by accepting that there are biological differences in the workplace. By giving additional days off for those experiencing menstrual pain, we acknowledge these symptoms to be real.
The thing that comes to mind is I think it's discrimination.
Discrimination!
I think at its highest. It's a situation where roughly about 50% of your workforce is going to not be eligible. That's
right. Just not be eligible, full stop. Just because they don't suffer menstrual pains.
And is there, I mean, I don't know.
There isn't any information about whether there is
evidence requirements?
There's no evidence requirements here. It's just period pain or other complications. I mean, how do you prove you've got period pains?
Well, in the same way you do with everything else, probably go to the doctor.
Go to the doctor.
But I mean, the doctor. You know my view on that.
Yeah,
the
how's the doctor going to prove that you've got period pains? This story blows my mind because I like the feel of it. They're trying to be more inclusive, but by being more, and this goes. I'm not going to tell anybody whether this is an Australian company or not, but I'm interested in this policy. And this goes to the heart of the anti-discrimination laws we have here in Australia, because the reasons behind it aren't important.
No,
the why is not important. And in this case, the company is genuinely trying to help women who are suffering from menstrual pain. But in the process, I think, incredibly discriminatory towards men who are not suffering it, or women, in fact, who make a choice not to have their periods and thereby not suffer period pains. I just blows my mind that there's a policy out there that is just so exclusionary.
What they've failed to take into account is all of those factors. And what I think they should have done is, if they have identified that the amount of personal leave which is given to employees is not sufficient enough to cover the normal person's days in which they are unfit for work. So if in any year they get 10 days, but actually most of the employees are actually unfit for work for 12, 13, 14, something like that. I don't see any reason why they don't just increase that amount.
Yeah, give it to everyone.
Because it might be a situation where someone else is unfit regularly for something else. And I mean, everyone's bodies and everyone's health situation is completely different. And they might also be, unfortunately, once every month, once every quarter, whatever, be unfit because of migraines, for example.
But there are no... This policy is not assuming that the women are able to take a particular number of days off.
No, it's an indefinite.
It's an indefinite thing, only when they're experiencing period pains. It says here that the person who put this policy in place, the owner of the business, the culture and communications manager, said the new policy is experimental and it'll be evaluated throughout 2022. And these additional days off, see how they impact well-being, perhaps expand the policy next year. And they said that, and this person said that the policy was inspired by her own experiences, that during a woman of the company meeting, she brought the topic up and found other employees had similar stories and experiences. But again, we're talking about women talking about to women, about women's things. We shared the same view on this matter, and would appreciate the possibility to lay down and take most of the day off without sacrificing a regular paid day. I'm sorry, what?
I think you don't defeat discrimination with more discrimination.
And how does this improve women's equality?
Well, that's the sad thing about this. The real loser is women. Sure, men might lose out on, 4 days a year that they're looking for. Fine, who cares? It's 4 days. But the entrenchment, people are people. People are humans. And if you want people to think equally, but you don't treat them equally, then you're asking others to do the same. And, the natural reaction to this is that the men of the workforce are not going to... They're going to be there longer. The lack of respect is going to only increase. And the damage that causes is going to be far greater than the damage of not being able to take leave once a month or once every quarter as they predict.
It brings me to a quote, and I'm going to quote it wrong, but Oscar Wilde in The Importance of Being Earnest, he wrote, and it was a woman talking to a woman, and there was a scene about two men making something make sense. Yeah. And she turns to her counterpart and she says, men are infinitely more superior when it comes to intellect of this type. And it just, you look at it and go, that Oscar Wilde is a time of the past, and I love his plays. But you just look at it and go, we're driven back to the 1800s.
Yeah, well, we're starting to separate people, and that's only going to create more issues.
Women are the weaker type.
Well, that's what you're, really encouraging, that type of mindset. But
I'm going to get a lot of people write in, and I'm going to get an awful lot of hate mail. But women don't need to have their periods.
Some do, but...
well, some do for pregnancy reasons and so on and so forth. But if you're not trying to get pregnant, you don't need to have your period. There's medication out there that allows you to skip that part of the cycle.
But what do you think? Do you think that 10 days that's on the end. Is some companies give more, some do. Do you think it's enough? I mean, I know it's a very subjective kind of thing, because it depends on you. Some people it might be fine.
Yeah, look, I do, because we come across a lot of people who have a crazy amount of leave days. And yes, we do come across people who have zero, but I think the balance is there. That it's the balance. We're not talking about individual, do you need more than 10 days off a year? We're talking about, as a workforce, is 10 days enough? And I think as a workforce we can say 10 days is enough.
Yeah, I agree. I think very rarely do we see situations where an employee who doesn't suffer from
chronic pain.
Yeah, like a sort of medium to long term. I mean, that's, if you're going to be out for 3 months, then yeah, you're going to use your sick leave. But that's not what the 10 days is really for.
Yeah.
But very rarely do we see a situation where someone's just sick throughout the year, you know, bits and bobs here and there, and they've run out of sick leave. It's pretty rare.
Yeah, and look, it really is. Yes, you people with chronic illness, I get it. I have chronic pain. You turn up to work every now and again with back pain. I mean, we as a community understand that either we're ready to go to work or we're not ready to go to work. But I don't think a policy like this is helpful from a lot of different angles.
I think they should consider just increase, if they feel as though they need it, they should just increase the amount of personal leave, make it 15, 14.
Personally, I find it offensive to say that women can't handle their jobs while also handling being a woman. You know, we've sucked it up for quite a long time. Anyhow, please don't write in and give me an awful lot of hate mail about my views.
Oh, we can handle it.
We can handle hate mail. Bring it on.
That's
Anyhow, hopefully you've enjoyed the Lawcast for today. We've had 2 very different cases. Somebody wanting 5 years off because of an permanent and irreversible, I like the language, disorder, and this policy on menstrual leave.
Yes, which I think they should rethink.
I think it's very discriminatory, which is why I haven't given any identifiers there, but I think it's incredibly discriminatory.
I'll wait to see if it ever gets challenged.
This was a news article, so it's out there somewhere.
Well,
someone knows about it.
All right, well, on that note,
yes.
Till next time from Melanie and myself.
Yes, thank you very much for watching and listening to the Lawcast. See you in 2 weeks.
Yeah.